Okay. Can you hear me? Oh, I've got you muted. Okay. Um, all right, everyone. Welcome back to another Canadian Immigration Live Q&A. This is the Thursday 11 a.m. edition with my good friend and colleague here, Alicia. Merry Christmas to you, Alicia. How are you doing?
Merry Christmas to you too, Mark. I'm hanging in there. It's snowing maybe a little bit. It's starting to get really cold here, so I think we're in for a frosty Christmas week.
Yes, I know. I was up in Edmonton visiting right here. Let's see, my good friend Ralph, and we'll pull this one down here where it fits. Ralph and Jaden and Bella and Kai, and I was up there visiting them the last couple days. Yesterday we went to the West Edmonton Mall. Anyone who lives up in Edmonton, it's a good place to go, and had a wonderful time. And then we got in the vehicle and decided to drive home quite late. And it was so snowy and blizzardy up there. But the further I traveled south, the snow slowly started to dissipate to the point where when we pulled up here in Lethbridge, there was no snow at all. But we know it's coming. And so it's just a matter of time. So that's the Canadian winters, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. So we'll bundle.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see here. I'm just going to make a couple little adjustments to, let's see here. If I can. I don't want to wreck this. I'm, there's the background, and then we'll just make this just a little bit more there. I think that'll work. There we go. That looks better. Okay, so let's see who's tuning in for our live Q&A today. Yesterday, that's why I didn't do one yesterday, was because I was up in Edmonton enjoying the mall with my family. So we've got Beats here. Hello, good to see you. Zakaria is here. And let's see who else. We got Krishna, who's tuning in from Kelowna. And make sure when you're tuning in that you post where you're tuning in from. And I had some really fun music I was going to play, but apparently YouTube thinks that I'm somehow pirating it. Let's just see here. I don't think, let's see here. No, not that one. Let's see. It was supposed to be this one, but I learned my lesson. So that would have been fun, but we're not going to use that one. Okay, let's see who else we've got here. We've got Zakaria. Merry Christmas to you, and best wishes to you. We've got Sarab, and we've got Billisper, and let's see. How do you pronounce that one? Can you read that one?
Jonathan 654 or Joyeux Noël. Sorry, I was
Joy
looking at the
Noel.
name.
There we go. See, Alicia's the French speaker. I'm not the French speaker. I'm the Portuguese speaker here. All right. And we're doing great. Merry Christmas to you, Billispoor. Okay. And then, oh, Tejas Feet. Hello. Merry Christmas to you over in Chandigarh. Good to see you. And yeah, Ralph Santa. And then Dipali is over in India. There we go. So it's always interesting your handles that you guys use. That's actually a little bit harder to see like that, isn't it? Let's change this here so that it's a
The
little bit
red was
easier.
hard to read. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So we can see your name. So we'll go with a nice, this should work. There. That's a nice orange. Okay. And Chima, nice. Chima is apparently eating cashews. That's great. There's the hello for Alicia. Sajad says Merry Christmas to us. We're doing good, Sing. We are only two sleeps away from Christmas. So super excited about that. Annie, Merry Christmas to you. And John Malin, hold off on your question. We'll get to it in just a second. Okay. Chima says, I got my PR card and now I'm eating cashews. Well, that is fantastic. Congratulations. We'll give you an applause for that. Okay, let's see. So hold off on your questions, guys, and we'll get to those just after we do some shout outs. Okay, Marcus is over. Lots of love to you and your team from Turkey. Welcome, Marcus. Thank you. That's great. And then we've got another one, Alicia.
Another Joyeux Noel.
Joyeux Noel from Detroit, Michigan. And we've got Iman. Hello to you. Gurkarat is saying hello. And CF apparently likes your surname, Alicia.
It's very long. It's a very long surname. The hyphen, it almost never fits on the forms, maybe just barely.
It's all good. It's all good. Okay, we've got Harmon's over in Vancouver, and Gurkarat is in the Yukon. Really? Okay,
oh, wow.
Gurkarat, what's the temperature like up there? It wasn't too terribly cold when I was up in Edmonton. It was probably, I think the coldest I got was maybe minus 18, 19. But in Celsius. But Gurkarat, what's the temperature down there? You're gonna have to let us know. Okay, Amir's over in Turkey, and we've got Avelino. Chris is over in Peru. Awesome, Lima, Peru, and Tarun is Mangalore, India. And yes, 11:33 p.m. You guys are diehards. That's great. And yes, Joy Noel from Detroit, from Darpin. And Gagan is from Punjab. Hello. Happy holidays. Bornstein is from Israel. Hey, we haven't had too many people from Israel. That's great. Let's see who else we've got here. Merry Christmas to you, Ramton. Good to see you. And we've got Iman, who's over in Windsor. And okay. Okay, if you go to that much trouble to put that many Canadian flags down, can't answer your question there, Preet. No one has a clue when the Indian visas will be actually get approved. We have no clue for those study permits. That's something we will, we can confirm. Anytime you guys ask us about the processing times, trust me, we're not going to have any more information than you guys do. Okay, Oyakola, Merry Christmas from Toronto. And Gagan Singh, good to see you. Merry Christmas to you. Monsoon from Winterpeg. Nice. That's my old stomping grounds. That's where I completed my my law degree. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay, we'll finish Chimu's story here. From Ontario, eating cashews. Got PR card today. Okay, so that's pretty significant. That's a big development there. Okay, Lenny, Merry Christmas to you. I have to do this, Alicia. All the comments these people put. Apparently your voice is very soothing, and Mark, yours too. Well, that's great. I think that was kind of thrown in there a little bit. All right,
Well,
let's see.
I'm also a yoga teacher, and so I've been working on the soothing voice for when I do my relaxation at the end of the yoga class. So
nice. That's great. My favorite pose is always child's pose. Is that the one where you lay down and you go to sleep?
Shavasana. Shavasana is the one where you lay down. You don't go to sleep. You just relax. Yeah.
Oh, relax. I always find myself going to sleep. Okay, Anthony, good to see you. Merry Christmas. Love the Christmas tree. That's great. And let's see here. I think we just about given shout outs to everybody. Yun Chen, hello. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. And we've got Sean who's in the house. Merry Christmas to you, Sean. Aisha, good to see you as well. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm trying to hit everybody here before we get into the Q&A portion. So Mohit, Merry Christmas to you from Waterloo. One of my good friends is an immigration lawyer who works with Gowlings in Waterloo, Bill McGregor. And so anytime I hear of anyone from Waterloo, I think of Bill. Okay, let's see here. Shirag is over in India. Damazig says, Merry Christmas, Joy Noel. Brooks, 1 hour, 20 minutes away from you. Wow. Well, there you go. Let's see. How far is Brooks from Calgary? It
almost
can't be
about the same way, right? It's
probably
kind of pretty much east, a little bit south.
Yes. Okay. And then we've got Navneet, who's in India. And let's see what else we have here. Osman is in your neck of the woods, Alicia, in Calgary. Penny says, Merry Christmas, coming on visit visa in summertime from Norway. I have the visa. That is amazing. Norway is actually what I consider my homeland. So my grandfather was Norwegian, and so Holthe is a Norwegian name. So that's really cool. Okay, let's see here if there's any more. I think we've given everybody. Samuel, hello from Nigeria. Great to have you here. And you said Biki from Nigeria. Awesome. Good to see you. And Divine, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you as well. And okay, Step in Education thinks you just are the bomb, Alicia. So big shout out for that.
It's that.
Exactly. And Vishal says Merry Christmas. All right, that was good. And then we'll finish off with Hardik with a ton of emojis there. We've got presents and birthday or and Christmas cake or something, the flag, and awesome. So hello, Hardik. It's great to see you. Okay. Well, we got a few more that jumped in there. Jojo is over in Medicine Hat, which is in the far southeastern corner of Alberta. So good to see you, Jojo. Thanks for tuning in on Facebook. And Manu is also from India. And I think we've covered pretty much everyone. Oh, Noureddin is over in Morocco. Okay, so there we go. So that was our big shout outs for today, which was great. So other than that, so Alicia was telling me before we got on today that she's been kind of going bonkers with a whole bunch of corporate immigration matters. So many of you guys see us doing the lives and we deal with a lot of individual work, but we also have companies that we work for. And boy, those can be super, super challenging. So sometimes it's refreshing to kind of just connect with you guys and do these live Q&As. All right. Should we do it, Alicia? Should we start the question period here? Dive right in?
Let's go for it.
Okay. All right. Let's start with, we'll start with Sajad. So Sajad Samedi, he was, I think Sajad, you were an alumnus, I think in my express entry course. But he says, it's been more than 7 months since I applied for CEC Inland. Should I be worried? And I'll answer, no, you should not be worried, Sajad, at all. The processing times are all over the map. And if you were listening to the comments that George made previously, George was also one of the alumnus. I'm not sure, Sajad, if he was in the course the same as you were. I can't remember. But anyways, he was getting really frustrated because the processing of his application, I think he'd filed in March or maybe February. And just last week, he finally got his passport request and landed. So that is super, super, super common to have it last that long. Okay, here's one from Sean, Alicia. He says, can my parents submit new passports different from what they have on file? They recently got passport request for visitor visa and they want to submit renewed passports. Is it fine?
So, yeah, this is always a little bit tricky when you've got your passports expiring, but when you have to get a visitor visa that's actually a counterfoil in the passport, you're going to want to have the correct passport number associated with it. It does depend on when the passport's going to expire, right? So depending on how long they want to come to stay on that visitor visa, maybe they're only staying for a few weeks and they can use that old passport, but if they want to actually have a longer period of stay, immigration is only ever going to give you a visitor visa that's valid for the length of your passport, whatever passport it is that you're using. So if you want to change that passport, you should let them know right away that you want to change it, explain that you're sending the renewed passports, make sure you've got copies of the old ones in case you need it for your file in the future as well. So
there we go. Okay, next one. This one is, let's see here. I think let's go with Boris here first. I skipped through his. Okay, so he's a TR to PR. He said, IRCC asked to submit police record from my home country, but I had submitted a letter specifying I never lived there 6 months while adult. Any concerns here?
yeah, well, I don't know if you've submitted proof that you didn't live there while you were an adult, or if you've got something else to show where you were living instead. Normally, if they submit those police requests, they're looking for that answer to come back. So if you never lived there, you can prove you didn't live there, then send your alternate proof that you didn't live in that country and you weren't an adult while you were in that country. Be careful though in terms of how they calculate place of residence. So go back through your history and make sure that you don't have things that are a little bit off in the way that you've described your personal history, your work history, or your travel history.
And there's one other alternative as well, Boris. Just go get the police certificate and just do it. And if there's no record, there's no record. And sometimes that also can absolve, any hassles or any issues that come up is, if it's possible to just go and get it. Now, maybe that in your country, it's really, really difficult or brutal, so there's two different options that you can pursue. But yeah, if you can, often when immigration asks for something, even if I feel like I've already provided it, I will just go and provide it again because somehow it's gotten lost or the officer didn't notice it or something. And you waste more time sometimes trying to prove the negative or prove the positive, I guess you could say, than to just go and do what they say again. So there we go. Okay, Jomelin asks the question again. So what does A25.2 mean?
All right,
Merry
so we're going to have
Christmas.
to, Merry Christmas to you too. We're going to have to flip over to the Act. So normally we will say the Immigration Refugee Protection Act or the Immigration Refugee Protection Regulations, but for shorthand, immigration often uses A to be the Act and R to be the regulations. So A is going to be Section
To the
25.2
Act.
of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act. And if they use an R and they use a number after that, they're referring to the regulations. So Section 25 is the section that talks about humanitarian and compassionate considerations. So it's a long section and they've amended it a few times. And so there's quite a few subsections now that are part of it as well. So yeah, if we keep scrolling down, we've got all the
Yeah, it's
ones and the
evolved.
1.2s and yeah, the
There we
1.3s.
go.
And then we have, yeah, A25.2. So this is not one that I often see, but it does sometimes come up. So if you have certain provincial selection criteria that are applicable to you, or often this is involving Quebec, right? You've applied for something and you
Actually,
happen
do you
to
know
be
what, Alicia?
living.
I'm just looking here at what John Mullen had said. She said
Yeah.
A25.2.
Okay.
So let's keep right here. I think this is what they're referring to. 25.2
Perfect.
versus
25
sub
sub
two.
2. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, and so so this is the other thing is make sure that the naming conventions in terms of the regulations or the act, you've got 25 point and then they do 1, 2, 3, and then they have a bracket system. So whichever one is applicable, if this is 25.2, then we've got a few subsections under point 2. And this is public policy considerations. So the minister is able to look at the circumstances of somebody who doesn't meet the normal requirements for being granted permanent residence under regular categories, and they can decide that it's justified by public policy considerations to be able to grant them an exemption from the normal requirements for PR and grant them permanent residence through the humanitarian and compassionate provisions.
And this is an interesting one too, Alicia, because guess what program, you guys, and I think this is really what John Mullen was getting at. Guess
Yeah,
what program this was created under the force of this particular section? I think
yeah,
drum roll.
this,
This was
yeah,
that
this,
magical TR to PR, you guys. And that's
yeah,
the basis upon which the minister could grant it because many of you would not otherwise meet the requirements of the act because there was no other provision that allowed low skill people to go through or, the NOC C's and D's in particular, although it encompassed more. And what was the public policy consideration? Well, it was the fact that the essential workers were working on the front lines. And this
yeah.
whole, like Alicia said, this whole section 25 is all about humanitarian and compassionate considerations and the administration of the act. So it's all
Yeah.
about all encompassed within this area.
And I should say too, so there's two sections here. Section 25 is normally the request of the foreign national. So a person can make a request, can apply for humanitarian and compassionate landing through a separate application. But 25.2 is that instead of the person applying on their own for themselves and sometimes their family, the minister can say there are certain public policy considerations and there are certain programs or circumstances where they can grant a whole section of people the ability to apply for permanent residency.
Yep, exactly. Good question. See, we're going big time here now. Good question, Jomlin. Okay, let's see here. George's question. If we receive PR via the OINP, can we eventually move to another province due to affordability? Will that affect our status or citizenship application?
Yeah. And so this is always, it's always important to be honest and truthful. And most of the provinces are not going to want to give you a nomination for their province unless you've proven a substantial connection and an intent to reside in their province. And normally that involves having friends or family that live in that province, or you've done your education in that province, or you have an employer in that province. And they will give you a nomination. There's each province only has an allocated certain amount of nominations every year that they can give out, and they want people to stay. They want people to help the economy in their province. So if you have signed an agreement with a certain province, take a careful look at what it is that you've signed off on, right? Depending on the types of programs that you've gone through, there's going to be different requirements in terms of maybe the knock, or maybe it's an employer supported position, but follow through on what it is that you had signed off and said that you would do. And after you've done that, after you're a permanent resident, then there are mobility rights under the charter, and you are able to move, especially if you can't afford it and things, life circumstances have changed. But be prepared to speak to an officer if they ask you questions about whether you met the obligations. So,
Yep. And that's something that we see a lot of. Like I probably have had more questions about that when it comes to mobility in the context of express entry and people wanting to live in Quebec. And those same provisions kind of are mirrored in each of the economic classes. And I'm just going to pull it up, Alicia, if I can find this. We're just going to do a little searching because I want to. It's now that I've got you here, you can answer the questions while I'm pulling up the actual legislative framework. But you'll see here as you go through this, I'm trying to remember which section it is. Let me just see here if we can find this. Okay, here we go. So you can see for the Canadian Experience class itself here, they have similar provisions, which as a part of the main membership in the class, it's based on their ability to become economically established in Canada, and they have to have an intention to reside in a province other than the province of Quebec. And when we look at the provincial nominee programs, this provision basically states that you have to have a demonstration, be able to become economically established in that province, and also that their intention is to reside in that province and not somewhere else. And so this provision, it's kind of adjusted, and I can't find the actual provision for the PNP right on the spot here, but that's the thing that people have to realize. And so yes, the charter is there. Yes, it grants freedom of mobility, but at the same time, I love it when I'm getting calls right in the middle of live Q&As. But at the same time, you have to like I always tell people, Alicia, that if the province has got faith in you and they put those, they're willing to grant you that nomination when there are thousands of other people that would do anything for it. You've got an obligation to do your best and to try to make the province better, because your skill set is what they're looking for. And so, yeah, legally there's, you have the ability through the charter for mobility, but yeah, George, give it all you got. That's the only thing that I can tell you. It's just really, really see what you can do in that province, and truly, if there's nothing, like, don't just go for convenience, but just genuinely try to make it work. So that's I guess I'll end it there. Okay. Andrew says, hey, Mark, do we need to inform RCC about quitting job after applying to the TR to PR essential worker stream? I was working at the time application submitted. Can I just stay home for a while without working? What are your thoughts on that, Alicia?
so I mean, hopefully you've met the 1 year, right? So make sure that at the time of application, you met the whole 1 year, 30 hours a week, 1,560 hours in that knock occupation that you chose for essential. I don't know if it was healthcare or non-healthcare, but it was a knock B, I think. So yes, you've got to be working at the time that you submitted the application, so that's good. And you also have to be present and have maintained valid status at the time that your application is processed. And so this is now where it becomes a little bit tricky. So I don't know what kind of work permit you had, but you have to maintain some sort of valid status. And who knows how long it's going to take for that TR to PR application to actually be finalized.
Yep. And I think one of the things that we do a lot, and I'll flip over right here now, when we have these specific types of questions, in the link below, you'll see that there's in the description below the video, you'll see that there's a link to book a consult. And that's really what we encourage you to do. Because anytime you're trying to figure out, what do I include? What do I specifically need to do? um, for Alicia and I to be able to really answer the question, we need to understand the full situation. And so we strongly encourage you to go over here and to book a consultation. And if we go back here, I'm just going to flip back to RA here. And RA says, I was asked to provide revised proof of funds with transaction history of each account. Should I attach the history for all my accounts, or where I have my funds? What about the credit card statements? Well, RA in the course, and what we teach our clients, is that you're supposed to provide all that stuff up front. And it's always an issue when you get a request from IRCC, and every single time I'll ring that bell, and I'll encourage you to slide over and actually book a consult so we can look at the whole situation. Anytime you guys get requests for information from IRCC, it's an opportunity to make sure that something isn't missing. And I'm assuming you probably filed through the express entry process. And if they're asking for funds in accounts, you're probably not a CEC then. So you're an FSW, and your application's probably been in the queue for a long time. And it's possible that they want to make sure that the settlement funds are there. And one of the things, Alicia, I know I shared with our viewers before, was with the videos. If I just go back to the video, I remember it's because the one that's got the black background, right? See if I can find it right here. This one. I talk about the actual request letter that came the passport request letter that came to the clients. And in there, they specifically, now something they never had before, was reestablishing that you truly still have your funds. And it kind of sucks because you've got a situation where people have really had to rely on those funds to support themselves in some cases, because they'd quit jobs, or, they'd made, financial decisions basically around the fact that they were going to be traveling, and then it didn't happen. And so whenever we get these questions, RA, absolutely, we ring the bell and we encourage you to book a consult so that we can give you actual legal advice.
But to
Yeah,
add to
please.
that too, I know we've got a little bit of time
Yep.
over the holidays here, and so you might have a very time sensitive request on that, right? Like depending on when they say that they need that information back. If you can't book a consult, then make sure that you send them everything that you can send them, because if you miss that time deadline, they're going to make a decision based on only what they have on file, and it sounds like they've got concerns. So
You bet. Yeah.
yes, try to speak to a lawyer, but make sure that you don't miss your time deadline or ask for an extension.
Right. Exactly. Okay, here's a tricky one that Manu has, which we've seen a lot. I'm unable to provide medical for non-accompanying child as he's with my ex.
Uh-oh. So these can be really tricky situations, and it depends on whether you've got a formal divorce, whether you've got a custody agreement, whether the divorce court has issued a judgment in terms of care and parentage, and who's making decisions on behalf of that child. And Canada is a signatory to the International Convention Against Child Abduction. And so anytime that people are separated, parents are separated, and there's a child involved, immigration needs to know that if you have a child and that child may possibly come to Canada at some point, the other parent has consented to that. And sometimes the parents don't want their kids to leave, and so they'll stonewall and they won't let the child go for the medical. And what happens, of course, is that there's a terrible provision in the regulations. It's called 117 sub 9 sub D of the Immigration Refugee Protection Regulations. And what it says is that at the time that the principal applicant gets their permanent residence in Canada, if there are any undeclared, unexamined family members, they are no longer members of your family forever.
Yeah.
There are some very limited exceptions, but it can become a very, very big problem. So this is always something that requires a little bit more discussion.
Yeah, it does. And I can't remember the name of the case, Justice Diner's case, which immigration relies upon a lot. At least I haven't heard that it's been overturned, which basically says, Manu, that you need to prove that you've actually made efforts. And just an email from your spouse saying, take a hike, Manu, is not going to be enough. And in fact, the federal court has stated that in some cases, it's expected that you actually travel back and use the court system to sort out the custody. And the cruel part of it, it's almost tantamount to giving up your parental rights to that child. So unless the ex-spouse has sole custody of that child to making all decisions, I've seen situations where they pretty much forced a person to give up custodial rights to the child if it's shared custody, and that's cruel and heartless. And yes, as lawyers, we fight that, but in some cases, that's been the case. I remember we had Alicia. Um, there was a doctor in Calgary, and her husband from India. His ex-wife, the relationship was not great, and he hadn't had any contact with the children. But there was a custody agreement in place where there was access and shared custody. And because of that, immigration refused their express entry application, notwithstanding putting all this emphasis and effort in. We even had, we went so far as to have an Indian lawyer attend with him at the home of the spouse and provide an affidavit, and they still rejected it. It was insane. And
Yeah.
so what did he have to do? He had to go and unilaterally give up those rights because his spouse, his ex, wouldn't even cooperate with the court proceeding. And
Yeah.
so it's really something you want to book a consult for.
It can be really tough. Occasionally, I have seen federal court cases too where they say it's not proving that you've gone to enough effort unless you've actually gone to try to get a court order
Mm-hmm.
from the foreign court to compel the spouse to
To do
allow
it.
the child to be medically examined. And if you haven't done that, then
It may
sometimes
not be
they
enough.
won't accept it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really, really weak. Oh boy. Okay, Marcus, October 2019 AOR. Okay, got the remedical request yesterday. That's good. How long does it usually take? If I flip back here, and if you go and you watch this video right here, this one, this is the one where the clients, it was all from the time in which they received their medical request, and this was for India and the US. The principal applicant was in the US, the dependent was in India. But in this case here, on this video here that we did, I did a couple months ago, it was about a month. So from the time period that they received the passport request, the medical to redo the medicals, and then they ultimately got their passport request, it was about a month. And it's hard. Yeah, I understand this wait is so hard, Marcus. We appreciate it. Like, and remember, those of you, I'll flip back again. Like, I've been trying to do a ton of videos as much as I can to keep you guys informed. And one of the ones I was invited to attend a technical briefing from the Department of Finance here in Canada. And that technical briefing right here is the green one. This fiscal update, I think $85 million, I think, was being attributed, or in addition to everything else, towards processing times. And then we talked also in that video about the fact there was about $1.3 billion that was being allocated towards the Afghan crisis, which in the surface you think, oh my goodness, that much money for that issue. Well, what about all the other ones we're dealing with? Well, in order to try to meet the mandates that that cabinet and our federal government had instituted and imposed upon the immigration department to assist with this Afghan crisis, they had to basically cannibalize all the other lines of business and the resources and the officers to assign them to this. So the hope is that 1.3 million, 1.3 billion, oh, that's a big number, dollars is going to free up those officers to go back to the locations where they were to continue with processing while new officers are brought on. So that's, yeah, an interesting world for sure we're dealing with, Marcus. Okay, let's see who is next here. Amir says, hi, Mark. I am an FSWO. AOR November 2020. Do I need to obtain a PCC if I stay in another country for 5 months and 20 days? Less than 6 months. Do I need to inform IRCC via web form? So I think this, I wonder if this is after Amir. I'm assuming you probably have stayed there after you got your acknowledgement of receipt on your federal skilled worker Outland application. Thoughts, Alicia, on this?
Well, I mean, reverting back to what you said there, like if it's so close and you're down to counting days and you've got I don't know how you can prove that. Maybe you've got receipts of where your accommodations are or something, but you know, if you can get a police certificate from that country more easily than having to prove to immigration that you weren't there for the full 6 months, maybe do that. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to have to prove that you weren't there for the full 6 months. But if you have been outside of the country, if you've been in another country for 5 months and 20 days, you probably do need to inform IRCC because you now have a change in your address, right? You've had 5 months is a long time. It's not like you were just there
Right.
for a week or two. So you've got to inform IRCC of a change in address and provide the fact that you were there, and then wherever you're going to now, what your new address will be.
Yeah. And there's a lot of ripple effects, Amir. So you need to be aware of those. Okay. Alina asks this question. She says, can someone have two work permit applications at the same time? One under the extension of a spousal postgrad work permit, open work permit, and one under the TR to PR open work permit. Thanks.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I
Well, you're
guess
basically
that's,
covering your bases, I guess, theoretically, but
yeah,
sometimes it can. Mhm.
yeah. I mean, both of them would be open. So I guess there's no restrictions on any of that work, and it just depends on when one was issued and when the other was issued in terms of your validity dates and your expiry dates. I don't think there's anything preventing you from having both of those work
Mhm.
permits. Presumably, you wanted to do it to keep your options open in terms of, getting a little bit more time on probably the TR to PR, but maybe it was the other way around. Maybe you did the spousal after.
Yeah.
At a certain period of time, though, if you do have two permanent residence applications concurrently, then immigration is going to ask you to choose which one to pursue.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's interesting too, Alicia, because I've seen immigration choose themselves. I've
Mm,
seen some people have reported that they just, said, we see you have another application. We're not moving forward with this one. It's interesting. It's kind of like they were making the choice. And I don't know if they have the ability to do that. Maybe they do, but ultimately, yeah. And when it comes to the work permit, like you said, an interesting thing is that officers as well will make decisions. So I know sometimes in the past, we would file a work permit extension from within Canada, and then the person would need to leave. And then on re-entry, depending upon the country that they were in, they would get the work permit right at the port of entry on re-entry. And then after a while, we'd get a notice from the inland processing center saying, we see that you already have a work permit issued. So we're not going to proceed forward with this one that you filed inland. And so it's a question of timing. Which one did you apply for first? And an
yeah,
officer could, they could do one of two things. They could say, well, um, we see that you already have one approved, so we're not gonna approve this one, or this is your last application, so I'll adjudicate the second one, and you'll end up with two work permits. And it's interesting, Alicia, because there's this common misapprehension that just because you have two temporary status documents, that the issuance of one therefore invalidates the other. But the parameters under which a work permit, for instance, is no longer valid are pretty narrow, right?
yeah.
So,
I'm trying to find the section. I know there is a
mm,
section, and I can't remember where it is now, about two permanent residence applications, and
oh yes,
there is more detail in terms of two permanent residence applications, but I
yeah,
would
we'll
have to go
dig that
try to
one
find
up.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing too, you guys need to realize is that under the act and the regulations, you can have more than one permanent resident application in the queue, but you can't have more than one sponsorship going on at the same time. So there
Yeah,
is an actual bar so if you've sponsored your spouse and you want to sponsor your parents at the same time, you can't do that. So you're going to be found ineligible as a sponsor if you have one that's still pending. All right. Okay. And then Sajed says, yes, I was in your course. It was amazing. Thank you, my friend. I love it when people give good, positive feedback. And actually, that's a really good segue into this one, Alicia, which is our upcoming, and it's really coming quick. We've got about 2 weeks, a little bit, maybe 3 weeks, 2 weeks, to before our very first spousal sponsorship course is launched. And so there's a link in the description below. At least I think there is. And all you have to do is just, when you're on the main screen here, just click on see our courses, and it'll bump you right down to this one. our spousal sponsorship course. And this encompasses everyone. If you've come as an express entry, applicant and you listed your spouse as non-accompanying, if you've met your true love and you want to sponsor them and they're outside of Canada or whether they're inside Canada, this course will help you to navigate your way through it. And all you have to do is just click on here to get notified when the registration opens, and then just leave your information in here and we will reach out as soon as the cart goes live, because it's not quite live yet. We're holding off just a little bit more. So go do and check that out. And then the express entry, our next express entry is going to be February or March. And I've had a bunch of people reach out and they've said, Mark, when are you doing the next course? Well, let's just watch and see. Because as everybody knows, if we look at these express entry rounds of invitations, yes, they're still doing PNPs. And yes, there was the big one, over 1,000 invitations that they did for draw. I think it was 211. And they just did one here just yesterday. 746 individuals were granted an ITA. And really, it wasn't super high. When you think about the score, individuals would need basically 120 CRS points, 120 human capital points, when you factor in the 600 they're getting for the PNP. So a string of PNPs. We have seen nothing federal skilled worker. Those of you who are asking the question, when are we going to see an FSW or a no program specified draw? Alicia and I have both kind of gone on record. I think I said maybe mid-January, and Alicia said Valentine's Day, I think is what you had said in the past.
I thought you said beginning of January, Mark.
Oh, I said the beginning. Did I? Well, maybe a New Year's present. Yes. We'll go with a brand new fresh start for 2022. Absolutely. Okay. So Sajad, yeah, it was awesome having you in the course. Thanks so much. So get over there, you guys, and just request to be notified. And we'll probably, I think in the next week, we're going to have that up there on the site probably after Christmas, so that you guys can, and maybe even the start of New Year might be when I open the cart. So we'll just watch for that and we'll let you know. Okay. This one. Oh, Jamalin. Alicia, my post-grad work permit is not yet released for almost 2 years. Should I be worried? I'm just going to ring this one, Alicia, and we'll leave it at that. I suggest you book a consultation with this Jamalin. I don't know if you've used a representative and maybe there's been a refusal that you were never notified. This happens, right? Or if it's stuck because of some security, screening or something like that. But no post-grad work permit should ever be taking 2 years to process. So I don't know.
Yes. The answer is yes. I probably would be worried if I were you.
Yeah, absolutely. So ring the bell and slide over here and just book a consult. And I know that I'll be available next week a little bit, and I know Chanel is. Alicia's been working like a crazy person, so I think she's going to take a little bit of time off with the consults, but you can go right here and you can book those and get in right away. And if there is an issue and you have a real urgent matter, we can usually try to accommodate you. So there's usually someone that'll be around that can meet with you, even though there isn't a time. And then all you need to do is just send an email to info. So info@holthelaw.com, but you should be able to find a spot there. Okay. Let's see here. So Arsalan applied for a study permit for a post-grad diploma program. My application got rejected based on current employment situation. I'm not currently employed. What could this mean? Oh, there's the answer. You've answered your question already. And it's hard because, yeah, for a study permit for a post-grad diploma program, so you're applying for a study permit, but you're not currently employed. So Alicia, do you want to take over that one?
Yeah. Well, basically, when you're looking at any sort of study permit application or any sort of temporary residence application, you have to prove a temporary intent. And so I've had a ton of consults about study permits recently, and they look at a number of factors. So those immigration officers are going to be looking at what are your ties to your home country. And so they will look at whether you're employed. They will look at whether you own property. They will look at whether you have a history of, extended family members and people who you've spent significant time with, usually only family members who can write letters of support saying, yes, they've got a strong connection here. But being employed is a strong indication that you will go back to your home country and that you've at least started a career there. When you're looking at doing a study permit for a course in Canada, it's always important to show that you're going to be studying something in Canada that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do in your home country. There's something unique or there's something very specific to the type of study you want to do. And if you've not been employed, you don't have any sort of relevant career experience, this makes it really hard to try to draw the line between, you know, or connect the dots between what you have been doing and what you want to do in the future and how that's going to relate back to a career in your home country after the end of your studies in Canada. So if you're not currently employed, it makes it harder to get a study permit to Canada.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, when I look at this situation, Arsalan, I see a postgraduate diploma program is what you're pursuing. So I'm assuming that you have an undergrad that you've completed, and they probably want to see, well, what are you doing with that? And like Alicia said, how is this all fitting into your overall plan? And even how are you supporting yourself? And so it's an interesting conundrum, Alicia, because sometimes people, if they've been working for 10 years and then decide to go back and do their post grad, immigration uses that against them and says, well, there's too large of a gap. And then in your situation, it really depends upon the your specific circumstances and why they focused on that. And Alicia and I both know, and I'm going to flip over here to this screen right here. You guys have to go and watch this. There's been about 12,000 people that have watched it, rightly so, because Will and I go through this Chinook system, which depending upon the country that you come from, this Chinook system is how they batch, basically adjudicate, in batches, study permits, and they group them by identifying kind of categories, and you can be easily pulled into that. And one of the things that, when you do get a refusal, and lots of people don't talk about this, Arsalan, is you do have the ability, if you feel that refusal was not, was unreasonable, I guess is the best way to describe it, is to judicially review it. So file a leave application for judicial review. And right now we know that the Department of Justice lawyers are pretty inundated, and they're waiting to see what's going to happen with this Chinook system. And so we're seeing a lot of them that are being consented to and sent back for redetermination. And so I think right now the best thing in the world we can do to fight this Chinook system and the way they're doing it is to challenge these refusals. Because often I've seen, well, it's not infrequent that we've seen grounds of refusals that don't seem to even match like your exact situation. So so same thing. We'll continue to ring that bell and encourage you guys to book a consultation, because there's nothing better than doing that.
But keep in
Okay.
mind,
Yeah, please.
Mark, that there's a deadline, right? So
Yeah.
take a look at the
Yes.
refusal date on your letter, because if it's an outside Canada application, you've got 60 days from the date of that refusal letter. So the time is ticking. So do be careful if you're going to be looking at a federal court application.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a great point, Alicia, too. And the time period, the limitation period that they give, don't come to us as lawyers the day before, because it's not going to work. When you're filing leave applications, there's a lot of moving parts associated with it. And there are things that you have to do that just take time and days to complete. It's not a matter of just sitting down and pushing everything off our desks, which we do frequently. There's serving and a whole bunch of different things that you have to do that just take time. And so be
And for JR
aware of that.
applications, inside Canada, it's 15 days. So
Yeah.
almost no time at all. So be really
Yeah.
careful if it's an
The moment
inside Canada application.
the moment you get the refusal, contact a lawyer immediately.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So Vita Nair says, super chat. Okay. FSW draw prediction considering Omicron. Well, if you want, Omicron's weird. Like, I'll be honest. I haven't heard the most recent reports with that virus. Super, super contagious is what we know. But it doesn't seem, at least the reports, the initial ones that I've seen, and maybe I'm wrong, suggest that it's not as what's the best word to describe it? Not as a severe reaction as maybe we've seen in the past, at least for those that have been vaccinated. So it'll be interesting to see, how that all plays out. But I'm still holding. I think we're still, Alicia and I are holding to where we were before, because at the end of the day, the government still needs to, they still need to meet their levels planning, and they're not slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah,
I don't
it
know if
is
you have
really
any extra
different.
thoughts.
Yeah, it is really difficult. I mean, I'm watching what's happening in Europe, and there's overwhelm starting to happen because so many people are sick that they're not coming to work, and then your healthcare systems and your other social services start collapsing because you can't deliver services if you don't have any personnel. So I think that's where it could possibly become an issue in terms of processing, just in terms of person power to complete the work on certain files. So we'll have to
Yeah.
see. Maybe they'll be looking at doing, expanding that program, like under the mandate letters. They said they're looking at expanding express entry. So maybe there will be some new options that will help people under the expanded express entry.
Yeah. And they may very well, one of the problems that we have is when it comes to processing is the need for a visa imprinted in a passport overseas. And, I'd love for them to do away with that and to be able to process things more electronically that doesn't require physical contact and the actual mailing of a passport and the imprinting of a visa in it, which is a part for many individuals coming from many countries. All right. So this one's from Harpreet. Harpreet says, I've not received an email from IRCC when I submitted my application under the TR to PR. What should I do to extend my open work permit under that?
So I wrote a whole blog article. It's very, very long. It's on our resources under blog. Yeah, and it's work permit. It's that one of the nice mountain scene there. How long can I stay in Canada after my work permit expires? And I was thinking of exactly this situation. What happens for all those people who are probably in Canada, they did a TR to PR, they don't have their acknowledgement of receipt. If you do have your acknowledgement of receipt, you can apply for that bridging work permit under the TR to PR. But if you don't have that, then you've got to start scrambling to try to figure out what your other options are so that you can maintain your status.
And this blog post, Alicia and I haven't yet confirmed. We were thinking maybe we would even do it this afternoon, but I think Alicia's got a few things on her plate right now. And so we're going to do a blog post specifically on this topic. And we are getting more questions about this right now, Harpreet, in this situation than probably anything else. People who are expecting and counting on an ITA under CEC to allow them to bridge, whose post-grad work permits are expiring, who are in a situation with the TR to PR pathway and they haven't yet received their acknowledgement of receipt, and their work permits are running out. So all of this, and guys, you have to appreciate the time that Alicia put in. You definitely want to get over here and you want to read this blog, but it's so comprehensive, and have your employers read it as well, because it's
Yeah.
not just for individuals, it's for employers. It's very, very comprehensive. It's loaded with information that is going to help you really no matter what your situation is. But none of this, even Alicia's blog post here, which you can see, it just goes on and on. It's a phenomenal post. It's a phenomenal post, super comprehensive. None of that will replace this right here, which is speaking to one of us. And in fact, actually booking a consultation with Alicia, because every person's situation is just a little bit different. And even with a blog that is that comprehensive, you're still going to be in a situation where there may be some unique aspects about your situation that could change the direction you would normally go. So don't hesitate, Harpreet, to book that consultation, or any of you who are in this type of a situation. Okay, let's just see here. I'm just going to pull up one more. Okay, and this one is from Harsh. And Harsh says, Merry Christmas. Thanks for the detailed explanation. I've been invited on last draw of, I wonder if that's supposed to be FSW maybe, on the 23rd.
Maybe.
Yeah, FSW on the 23rd of December, 2020. It's an anniversary of our application. Can we expect COPRA in the next 6 months? Want to tackle that one, Alicia?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, maybe, but I think, Mark, you were saying the last people you were talking to, they were maybe December that they were getting
Yeah,
it
they filed
relatively soon.
December 2019. So they were
Oh,
a
they were
full
December
year
2019.
before. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think we've got more time. 6 months, like they're putting money towards it, Alicia. So it's
Yeah.
possible. I think I've got more hope after seeing the financial and the fiscal update that I attended last week. I've got more optimism with the money that's being allocated to deal with the Afghan crisis, as well as millions of dollars allocated to basically hiring more officers. That's what processing is, right?
Mhm.
And they've already allocated a ton of money to work on the portal issue. So now it's just getting the bodies to be able to adjudicate the applications.
So in the meantime, Harsh, make sure that your passport's valid. Make sure, if you are able to go get updated medicals fairly easily, maybe just do that proactively, right? Just be ready, and hopefully that'll speed things up so they don't have to pause and ask you for more documentation.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see what we have here. Uh, okay. So this is how much time for a foreign national's work permit timing. Okay. Well, we've done this before, you guys. I think he's asking for the processing times, and anybody can really pull this up. And so I'm going to flip my screen over here. And all you have to do is just do a Google. I did IRCC processing times and then check processing times here. You can go here, and any processing that you want to get at least as good of idea as you can, you just go here and select your option. So work permits, you can see here which type of temporary application. Well, usually work permit outside Canada, if that's where you're at. And then you can see it's based on location as well. So that's, so when we get these questions like how long does it take to process a work permit generally, that's where we'll direct you back to, you guys. Okay, and Manu is back, and I'm going to ring the bell, Manu, and this will be the last one we address because you really need to book a consult. But Manu says, what else can I do if I'm unable to provide a medical as my ex-husband refused to do so?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any last minute, thoughts.
Yeah, like literally the courts are saying you have to go to extraordinary efforts to try to get the spouse to consent so that the child can get medically examined. Because otherwise, if the child is not medically examined and is part of your application, then you can never sponsor your child. It's awful and terrible. And sometimes, life happens, and sometimes the spouse overseas that has the child gets sick or sometimes dies. And then you have a child by themselves. And if the other parent is in Canada and has landed as a PR and has said under 117.9D that they're never going to bring the child because they signed off on that, they refused to get the medical, and they proceeded anyways, then you can never ever sponsor your child. It's terrible.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
do whatever you can to try to get a court order to try to compel that parent overseas to have the
yeah,
child, allow the child to be medically examined.
yeah. There's no getting around it. It's an ugly, ugly scenario. Okay, I'm just going to show this here. So Ralph, he actually sent me this by Facebook. So this was me up in Edmonton with little Jaden, my little godson, and so we had a lot of fun there. Anyway, so there's a little picture. Thanks, Ralph, for sharing that. He sent me a message. He said, "I send you a picture with you and Jaden." So that was, yeah, we had a really good time, really good time. And those of you who don't know the backstory, so Ralph and and Bella and Kai and the whole family, they all immigrated from Germany, and they were past clients. And like many of you who are going through this process where you just don't see a future, they had reached kind of the end of the line, and they didn't have a lot of options. And then there was this miracle program that was launched by the Alberta Immigrant Nominee Program a number of years back now, where they allowed anyone, regardless of their NOC level, C or D or otherwise, as long as they were working in Alberta, to go through the Alberta Experience class, I think is what they used to call it. It's similar to our Alberta Opportunity Stream. It was kind of the precursor. And many of you who were able to get through the TR to PR pathway, who didn't see a path for you before, it was kind of like this. But then for Ralph, Ralph had a little bit of he had a little bit of a learning disability that made it impossible for him to write the language test. And so even though he was working in Alberta, he just couldn't, like, the reading and writing component and the listening component just didn't work. Like, Ralph's English is great; he can speak and everything. There's no problems with that. But we were able to go through for him and file a Canadian Experience class application through Express Entry using substituted kind of evaluation for the language, which is a possibility if you can prove that that there should be an exemption granted. And they refused us, Alicia, and then we
Uh-oh.
didn't take no for an answer, and we immediately filed again. and now Ralph is a permanent resident. The whole family is. So they're just, yeah, they're like a family to me. So there you go. I wanted to share that with all of you. All right. Okay. Penny says, do I need a medical test on a visit visa?
So it depends. So you can actually go online. IRCC will actually have a drop-down list for you so you can check. So depending on the country where you have visited or resided in the last 6 months, some of them have medical requirements because there's a greater possibility that there's a contagious disease. And I don't know what's going to happen about COVID, but so far it's not COVID. It's mainly they're looking for things like tuberculosis, or
Mhm.
if you're going to come and do certain types of interaction with vulnerable populations in Canada. So.
Yeah, and this is really a good starting point. Um, Let me just open this up here. It didn't shift over. I'll just put that one up. So yeah, that's the question. So basically here you can see, find out if you need a medical, and to a large extent, like Alicia said, it comes down to the country. So if we go with Afghanistan, yes. Albania, no. And then the specific medical office that deals with it. Angola, yes. So you guys can just go and do that little search and take a peek. This is fun. I like this. I like you being able to answer the question, and then I can kind of do a little bit of work in the background. Okay. Okay. I'm going to try to, if you've had one question answered, I'm going to shift. We're just about out of time here. I'm going to go through a couple more. Mahir says, I'm going to give a round of applause here. Mahir says, express entry course plus consultation with Alicia is the ingredients to proper application submission. I agree. I agree 100%. If we flip back here, like I said, you can also go here. You can, when you click on get the course, if you express entry one, when you click on learn more, you can go here in the same way and just as the spousal course, and then reserve your spot now. So there's a limited people that we can take. There's only so many. We take 250. I did have to make a modification to that when the TR to PR course was launched because we had so much demand and there was no one else offering anything similar, and there was just a massive need, and so we took substantially more than that in that course. But generally speaking, we kind of cap it at 250. So if you want to reserve your spot now, you can do that, but we'll see what happens with the rounds of invitations. But Mahir, I agree with you. That is
It is really
definitely
nice. It is really
go.
nice, Mark, to come onto these lives and see people that I've had consultations with or clients who've retained us who are tuning in and still wanting to know more and wanting to stay current with what's going on with immigration. So hello
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah. And especially the ones that come back and say, hey, it worked awesome. And they just want to say hello. We really become like a family. And, we've got a lot of, graduates, I call them, of the Canadian Immigration Institute, alumnus, and and many individuals who book consults and retain us to do collaborative reviews, in addition to the courses that we offer in the master classes. So thanks, Mahir. Okay. Okay. This is same thing. Hardik, I'm going to direct you back. He says, sir, when will we get any updates on the paper-based files for self-employed persons program? And it's the same thing. Go to that link when you're looking for checking for processing times, and you can look it up the same way as anywhere else. And you'll see that right at the beginning, like you said, there's not much that we can do. We know anecdotally that it's years. Okay, we know, but we can't say because every country is different, every situation. And so I don't know, Alicia, while I'm just pulling this up, go ahead. You've got
Yeah.
a few things to add.
Yeah, I do have something to add. I am helping somebody with a self-employed application right now. And one thing to note is that it is now possible to file online. So this is not going to help people who've already filed and they've been in the queue for years, which is now showing 36 months for those
And it
self-employed
was last
applications that have
updated
already been
yesterday.
filed.
So
Yeah.
last updated yesterday. So this is, even though we have this, but yeah, go ahead, Alicia. Sorry.
So I was going to say, if you are looking at filing a brand new self-employed application for permanent residency, if you look up, some applications can now apply online in IRCC. There is this new permanent residence portal, and it'll talk about who's eligible under this portal. And one of them on there is the self-employed class. And you can start a new application. It's going to ask you which program you want to do. It's going to give you drop downs for each of those. You can customize, but self-employed persons is on there. So hopefully now those processing times, if you do go through the new portal, will hopefully start coming down because that electronic application now is hopefully going to be processed. The one bad thing is maybe they'll start processing those sooner than they're processing really old ones that are sitting in the queue. So that is something to consider as well. It looks terribly intimidating. When you guys log on to this permanent residence portal, it looks awful. There's a giant number of forms, but depending on which category you've chosen, you're going to also want to go check the document checklist for your program. So check the document checklist for self-employed, and then make sure that you are, yeah, exactly, that you are following all the forms and requirements on your document checklist. This document checklist, it's not perfectly updated. It still talks about the old paper file. So you're going to kind of have to hybridize that to make sure that you've got all your supporting documents, because for the self-employed applications, it's all about those supporting documents. It's not just the forms themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can tell you guys unequivocally that if you follow every single thing on this document checklist when you're filing a self-employed application, it will not be enough. And when it comes to, there's things that the officers look at. One is your ability to support yourself in Canada as a self-employed person. And there's no discussion about providing a business plan or like very, very limited guidance on proving how you're going to actually sustain yourself and what the plan is after you arrive to to economically establish yourself. And you're also, there's an expectation that you're going to contribute to the cultural and, the well-being of Canada. And so those are things that if you go through this checklist, you just don't see. And that's one of the differences between just winging it on your own and retaining a representative to assist you who's been down this path. Is there are definitely things that, and what do? We go up, we do this. We go PDI, self-employed, IRCC. We'll put in Canada there too. I got these caps going here. And you'll find that there are specific instructions and directions that within the operational guidelines that give more information on, what immigration is actually looking for. So these operational guidelines are things that most agents or consultants don't really tell you too much about. But this is really the instructions that the officers are given in how they are to assess, how they're to treat the information that's being submitted, and it's broken down into all these different categories. And so if it's permanent residence, you can just continue to drill down into all the economic classes, and you can see here they have information for all of these. All these different programs, the temporary pathways even here. And, all of this is all kind of built into here, self-employed and entrepreneur. And so you click on the link and you just continue to go down till you find your category, self-employed persons class. And then this is what the officers are looking for, right? And so this is where, understanding how to find this information, which is not, readily, it's not intuitive. You wouldn't even know it existed if you were just working off of the actual checklist that immigration provided.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. We'll finish with one more question here and then we'll wrap this up. Okay. Okay. I'll just put this in because it's kind of funny. I still remember the time when someone asked you, am I eligible? You were laughing. I believe that was 4 months ago. It wasn't a facetious laugh. It was just kind of a funny laugh because I didn't know what program. I didn't know who the person was. I didn't know their requirements. And so that was a ring bell. So Chris, thank you we have lots of fun in this. We definitely do. Okay. Okay. So we've already answered that one. Let's see here. Let's see here. I think maybe I jumped up a little bit. Okay, let's finish with this study one. So we'll finish with this question, which many, many people ask. And yes, as I flip over here to back to the screen and I go down and tell you guys to look at, let's see, it is this one with Will and myself right here, how your visa gets refused, update on the Chinook system. If you haven't watched it, go over there and watch it once again. But Alicia, this is the question we get so frequently. I did everything right. I included everything that was on the checklist, right? So why did my study permit get refused?
Yeah. And I think I'll probably write a blog article on this too, Mark, but I need a bit of a break for the holidays. But
Yes.
eventually I will write a blog article on this. But put yourself in the situation of a very suspicious immigration officer. And imagine all the things that that very suspicious immigration officer would want to know about you, your life in the country that you're living, your education, how well you did, right? Your marks that you may have gotten in your high school or undergrad degree, and what your living circumstances are, like how you afford to pay for your expenses, what your plans are, what your work history is, what you want to do, and then relate that to the study in Canada. And there has to be a clear linkage. There has to be an explanation for why you want to do this program in Canada and how it's going to relate to further your career in your home country. So a lot of people are missing some of those aspects when they put together their application.
And this is one of the things, like it's so fact specific. It's so dependent upon your personal circumstances that, that's where booking those consultations with us makes a difference, because you will not even know the questions that you need to ask. You might think you understand what's really important, but through those consultations where we can actually get on a call with you and a video call and talk about your history, you will say things that will cause us to think, oh, what about this? And then we will ask you questions to dig out more information that can help to strengthen your application. And so often that first shot that you take, that first kick at the can that we say, can make all the difference in the world. And it's way, way harder to do and get a second application approved than it is to get the first one. And I can't tell you how often, Alicia, I've seen people who said that their representative just submitted some garbage application, and then we're waiting for immigration to come back and say what the areas of concern were, and then that they would file a subsequent one to answer and respond to all those, alleged concerns that the officer had. That is a horrible approach. Horrible. The best time to get it right is the first time. All right. Well, actually, I've got one more from Amir here. He says, I'm going to graduate in April 2022. I'm eligible for a 3-year work permit, but my passport expires in 2 years. If I get a new passport, do I need to update IRCC about this? So how do you approach this, Alicia?
Yeah, so there is a provision, and you can look it up. IRCC does have some information on recapturing time. Basically, what you're doing is, yes, there's only one postgrad work permit, and I talk about this a little bit in that blog post as well about if your work permit's expiring. But you are able to apply if you were going to be having the 3-year eligibility for your postgrad work permit, and the only reason they're issuing it for a shorter period of time would be because your passport's expiring. You are able right now, depending on your country of nationality and how long it's going to be taking you to get your passport back, you might apply now to get the new passport and then just have it for the full 3 years. But if you're going to have a gap, right, if there's not enough time to get that passport back, then depending on your circumstances, it might be better simply to do 2 applications for that work permit. You get the first postgrad work permit, it's going to be issued to the end of the expiry of your current passport. Then you apply for the new passport, you inform immigration, and you do an application to change conditions on that work permit to recapture the time that you would have otherwise gotten for those 3 years.
Perfect. And as always, Amir, if you need any assistance, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, I'll finish off. I keep saying that I'm done. And I know there's a lot of you. I will, let's see, Wednesday. I think I'm going to be back with another Q&A next week. We'll see. I may have to do it at a different time, but this is something I want you guys to do. Go over to the YouTube channel. And if you haven't liked or subscribed or whatever it is, I don't know what the term is, get the notification. So when we do our live streams, we will make sure that on the homepage, you're going to have just like this, there'll be a list of the upcoming live Q&As that we're going to have in the times. So usually I always do a live Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. And Alicia, we're trying to consistently do it Thursdays at 11. So if you can make that would be great. But if you're not sure and we have to make a change, always come back here. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you can get notified when the next live is going to happen. And then also when we do have, scheduled lives, click the bell to get notified so that when we go live, then you'll know. Sometimes we're a little bit late getting started because we're working on files. And other times we've got different things, even our families and our own personal lives, that require us to shift around, including the holidays. And so it's interesting, Alicia, we had, I was actually going to I forgot to bring in all of our friends this time with our, even the snow and everything. But yeah, it's, do take the time to connect here and subscribe, and then you won't miss it if we have to change it last minute. All right. Okay. Well, there we go. Well, Alicia, I'm so tempted to play it. You know what? I don't care. I'm going to, because you can't have, let me see. Not that one. This one. Okay. I'm going to play the music as the sign because they can't shut me down now. Because we've already done it. So Merry Christmas to you, Alicia, and your family. Thanks for joining today. And Merry Christmas to all of you out there as well who are watching these.
Merry Christmas, Mark.
Okay. Take care, guys. Signing off.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Canadian Immigration Institute, Mark Holthe and Alicia Backman-Beharry. See you guys.